humid out, if you hadn't noticed. Humid, humid, humid. Alright. We are now live. We are now live. Okay. Let's go ahead and get into part 2 of 1 Samuel. We'll be discussing some things, and to open us up, we're going over the last Sir John Benjamin quote. Alright, portion of a poem. We have here, ghastly good taste, or a depressing story of the rise and fall of English architecture. This is from potentially a poem called Book Title, 1933. I couldn't find it when I did try to look up the whole thing. I was trying to figure out my spelling on one of these words. I could not find it, so I don't know if it's just if I put book title. I don't know. I think that was a poem. My cat just ran in, very scared. What happened? Tail is all poofy. Anyways, reading it one more time. Ghastly good taste, or a depressing story of the rise and fall of English architecture. So we will be discussing rise and fall, and if you hadn't felt this already, these early stories, maybe even some later stories in the biblical text, can be a little depressing, right? We are not reading and gaining too much joy and pleasure from reading these stories. It causes thought, right? It provokes thought for sure. And a lot of them do have good moral underpinnings or just good moments for learning. Once again, right? Let me close this once more. Air Force. There's a dog out there. That's why. Anyways, it's not an easy read. You know, I can see and I can understand why people do not read the Bible. Just from what I've read so far, I could understand. It's very inundated with a lot of detail. It does take a little bit more focus to be able to keep up with the characters and know, I say characters, but you know, to keep up with the individuals in the text and to understand, you know, setting a little bit, geographical setting, that sort of thing. So it's a difficult read. I can see why people are not invested in really understanding and really learning about the Bible, because you read one thing, you get sad, you get emotional, you get depressed, because it really does have a lot of emotional attachment. Much like most of us, I would say, in this generation, my generation, who maybe stopped reading around middle school, early high school. I was one of those people, you know, very avid reader when it came to Pretty Little Liars, Twilight, and then even earlier we had like the Boxcar Children and all those books. You know, I was a very avid reader, but once it got, you know, to the time of distraction, it kind of all went out the window, and sometimes we would have the book reports that nobody had time to read these books. Nobody had time to read The Lord of the Flies, especially if you were in athletics or what have you. I won't say nobody read it, but you know, we have the internet and Cliff Notes and all that sort of thing. So, you know, I can understand, you know, just going back and revisiting the text. I'm not saying I don't read it all anymore, but it's, you know, during that time, no way. But after, you know, having some time, going back to the text, it can be a bit challenging. That's why sometimes I do take a few days to get through certain things and to really digest it as I should and be able to relay to you the messages that I should. It's a challenge, and I'm not going to say it's not. So along with that, we are going to read about another rise and fall, just a short portion, a little depressing, but of course it did, you know, form our culture and our history. Like, we're wondering where European culture came from, really, because it was founded on religion or Christianity or Catholicism, that sort of thing. came from the Bible. So we can wonder, where all these cultures of the world get their culture, oftentimes through colonization and things like that. A lot of terrible things, but that's the Bible for you, right? You hear a lot about some terrible things in the Bible, but that's just, again, the nature of the world as well. So, without me rambling too much, you can tell it was a coffee kind of day, I think. Let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start out with chapter 4 and go on to chapter 7. Okay? It says here, chapter 4:1. Now the Israelites went out to fight against the Philistines. The Israelites camped at Ebenezer and the Philistines at Aphek. So, we skipped a little bit of time here, but Samuel is an adult at this point. Eli is still alive, and at this point in our reading, both of Eli's sons are still alive. But they're having some issues with the Philistines once again, right? They're a reoccurring enemy. Then, what had happened is, remember, the ark was at Shiloh, right? Eli was in Shiloh with his sons. They were servicing the ark of the covenant Lord. So the ark was in Shiloh. What the Israelites did was they brought the ark to their camp. We wouldn't think that that would be permissible, but we remember that Eli's sons were in charge of the ark. At this point, Eli's a bit old. He really doesn't have much say, even though he is leading the Israelites. So his sons go ahead and allow the Israelites to bring the ark into the camp. So the Israelites, they go crazy. They're hooting and hollering. The Philistines, from an earshot away, hear what's going on. And then it leads us to 4:7. It says, the Philistines were afraid. They said, a god has come into the camp. Oh no, nothing like this has happened before. So the Philistines are wondering, why did they bring the ark? They're extra excited. Close this once again. Hey, baby. And then it says here, they go into battle. So the Philistines fought the Israelites. So the Philistines fought, and the Israelites were defeated, and every man fled to his tent. The slaughter was very great. Israel lost 30,000 foot soldiers. So there was, they lost. The Israelites lost, right? We barely hear about this happening, but it did happen. It also says here, the ark of God was captured, and Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, died. So this was the moment where Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, they died on the same day. This was exactly to ring true the prophecy that was told to Eli by the man of God, which was also told to Samuel by God. He didn't give Samuel the details of how his sons were going to die, but he definitely implied a pending doom on Eli and his lineage. So, unfortunate, this is how it resulted, or this was the result. It was in war, and the slaughter of 30,000 other Israelites. So, of course, somebody's reporting back to Eli. Says, the man who brought the news replied, Israel fled before the Philistines, and the army has suffered heavy losses. Also your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured. When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backward off his chair by the side of the gate. His neck was broken, and he died, for he was an old man and he was heavy. He led Israel for 40 years. All right, so that was a very rapid ending for Eli and his family. Not only did his sons pass, Eli did as well. When he heard the ark was captured by the Philistines, which they did in fact capture the ark, and they brought it back to the Philistine camp. Eli could not have that at all. He passed, but it says here, led Israel for 40 years. I'm going to go on here. The Lord's hand was heavy on the people of Ashdod and its vicinity. He brought devastation on them and afflicted them with tumors. When the people of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, "The ark of the God of Israel must not stay here with us, because his hand is heavy on us and Dagon our God." So, yes, the Philistines captured the ark. It did some weird things. They had a statue of Dagon, and the statue of Dagon kept falling over. And then the people of the land of the Philistines in Ashdod, they all got sick and tumors. So they did attribute it to the ark there. Then they answered. They actually reached out to some diviners or diviners, people who practice divination, right? And they asked them, like, what should we do? How should we return this ark back to Israel without any more consequence coming to us? And they answered, if you return the ark of God to Israel, if you return the ark of God of Israel, do not send it back to him without a gift. By all means, send a guilt offering to him. Then you will be healed, and you will know why his hand has not been lifted from you. Now then, get a new cart ready with 2 cows that have calves and have never been yoked. Hitch the cows to the cart, but take their calves away and pen them up. Take the ark of the Lord and put it on the cart, and in a chest beside it put the gold objects you are sending back to him as a guilt offering. Send it on its way. All right. So that's their gift. That's the Philistines' gift back to the Israelites, which is interesting, right? It says, these are the gold tumors the Philistines sent as a guilt offering to the Lord. One of each, Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. So this was to represent the rulers of the Philistines of the different regions, and there was gold pieces from each of them. It seems a little bit strange sending it to a God-driven community, but hey, it says here, now Samuel was serving as leader of Israel at Mizpah. So they sent things back. Samuel was in charge. That was the next in line, right? When the Philistines heard that Israel had assembled at Mizpah, the rulers of the Philistines came up to attack them. When the Israelites heard of it, they were afraid because of the Philistines, as they should be. They had lost before. But Samuel, though, had the confidence, and while Samuel was sacrificing the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to engage Israel in battle. But that day the Lord thundered with loud thunder against the Philistines, and threw them into such a panic that they were routed before the Israelites. Samuel continued as Israel's leader all the days of his life, but he always went back to Ramah, where his home was, and there he also held court for Israel, and he built an altar there to the Lord. So here we have Samuel taking up the leadership, first guiding the Israelites in battle that actually never really happened because the storm fell upon the Philistines before that, and they were dissolved. They were so frightened, they knew that was a warning that if they were to go into battle, they would surely lose. So they decided to fall back. But yes, now we have the rise up, or the rising of Samuel. Yes, I'm almost done. I'm almost done, you little noisy. Go ahead. In and out, that cat, especially in the morning time. This is the I don't know what I'm trying to say here. The rise up of Samuel. The rising of Samuel. And we are going to see what's next, because I don't actually know. I think it's something to do with Samuel's lineage now. But we'll learn about this very soon. That's all I have to say about this one. Just a little bit of drama here. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.